and hopefully you can all hear me correctly.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Hi, I'm Paas. I'm a research fellow at Griffith University's Climate Action Beacon, and thanks for having me. Unfortunately, I'm not able to join in person today. So before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands that we meet upon, and I will also extend my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. So today I will be talking about rethinking see the reef, love the reef, and protect the reef, and how emotions and climate beliefs shape conservation, even without seeing the reef. So this work has been done together with my colleagues Carrie Foxwell-Norton and Lucy Bird at Griffith University, and in consultation with the Reef Authority, and most specifically Michelle Dyer and Cindy Hushiri. Since we only have 10 minutes, I will go in straight to the results pretty much and only have a very brief background. So today I'm showing some data from the National Climate Action Survey, which is a longitudinal survey that assesses Australians' adults' understandings, feelings, and responses to climate change and related environmental issues. We've run this survey since 2021. We've got 4 years of data, and we are about to start data collection on the 5th year. And each of these surveys, we try to get a representative sample based on age, gender, and state or territory of residence. In 2023 and 2024, we have collected some data on the Great Barrier Reef, and these questions were chosen in collaboration with the Reef Authority, but also with CSIRO, with some of the questions coming from the Socioeconomic Long-Term Monitoring Program. And in the 2023, which is the data that I've used for the analysis in this presentation, we had a sample of 3,895 people, of which 5% lived in the reef catchment, 15% in the rest of Queensland, and the other 80% lived outside of Queensland. And we have 49% females and 50% males, with the remaining people indicating they did not want to specify their gender or were non-binary. So what have we found? In our 2023 sample, we found, among a lot of other things, that 96% of Australians know what the Great Barrier Reef is. That means that 4% don't know what it is. 93% of Australians feel proud that the GBR is a World Heritage Site, and 90% feel that it's the responsibility of Australians to protect the reef. 61% feel that it is their responsibility to protect the reef, and 60% feel optimistic about the future. For all of these findings, there were no consistent significant differences between those residing in the reef catchment, those outside of the catchment still in Queensland, or those outside of Queensland. We've also asked about views on climate change and its impact on the reef. And we found, again, that although the graph might suggest that there are slight differences, these are not significantly different. But we found that across Australia, 68% of people think that climate change is a threat to the GBR requiring immediate action. And there's also a small set of people that don't believe in climate change at all. So, see the reef, love the reef, and protect the reef. Since 2019, the Reef Authority has used this tagline to guide its public communication efforts. And the desired outcomes for communication strategies of each of these elements is underlining a connected pathway that is see the reef will predict loving the reef, which will in turn predict protecting the reef. We tried to empirically test that effectiveness of this communication, and we have aligned some survey questions to each of these three concepts. So for see the reef, we had two options. One was the last visit to the reef, or whether people were optimistic about its future. Love the reef had 4 items, and they were used as to create a latent variable for love the reef, which was whether people felt proud about the reef, whether it was part of their identity, and the emotions that they experienced, sadness or anger. Then for protecting the reef, we used another latent variable with 3 items, which included the items about responsibility to protect the reef, whether that's personal or all Australians, and whether conservation is more important than coal mining. These items predicting the latent variables, they were loading very well. So what did we find? We found that having physically been to the reef did not predict love of the reef. However, love of the reef did protect people's willingness to protect the reef. And the top line here is that physical having been to the reef, and the bottom line is the standardized variables in a structural equation model about for optimism about the future of the reef. So our second model tested how optimism for the reef's future predicted people emotions. And we found that lower optimism leads to higher emotions, so more sadness, anger, but also more proud and feeling it as part of their identity, and higher emotions leading to more willingness to protect the reef. However, when looking at the model fit, we found that it was a relatively poor fitting model. This means that it did not adequately represent the data in our observed data, and we might have missed some key variables. So what did we do to improve our structural equation model? We included items about climate urgency, climate concern, and climate responsibility. So the climate urgency perception, how important is the issue of climate change to you personally? How serious of a problem do you think climate change is right now or in 2050? It is an issue that requires urgent action now. You are certain that that is happening, or when do you think we will start feeling the effects of climate change? These 6 items again created a latent variable, and all items loaded very well. For climate concern, we had 4 items. How concerned are you? Considering any effects of climate change that might affect you personally, how concerned are you? Whether it's concerned for your society in general, or how concerned are you that climate change in general might directly affect you, your family, or your local environment. And climate responsibility also had 4 items. It is due to how I live my life. I feel partly responsible for contributing to the exhaustion of non-renewable energy resources. I feel partly responsible for climate change, and I feel a sense of urgency to change my behaviors to help to reduce climate change. We found that all of these variables were significant indicators of our latent variables. So what did we find? I know this graph looks a bit scary, so I'll try to talk you through it very, very quickly. And I can see I only have 2 more minutes. So you can see here that the green bigger lines are actually the strongest predictors. So the climate concern and urgency actually predict more of protecting the reef via that love for the reef. I'll quickly go further to my last set of results because I want to show you something else as well. This model was fitting a lot better than the model just having the top 3. So we also ran a latent profile analysis, and we found 3 distinct groups of people. The reef ambivalent people, they have limited emotional responses to the reef's issues. They feel not as sad, angry, proud, or part of their identity. Reef aware, who score somewhat in the middle, and the reef connected one, who have very strong emotions. And we found that these 3 groups were pretty similar, around 30 to 38% of the population. And this is a person-centered approach, so we're looking at the variables together rather than in isolation. So the results for that is that the reef ambivalent people, those who felt less connected to the Great Barrier Reef, showed the least concern about environmental issues and were least likely to take action. So they are scoring lower on most of these. Whereas the people that were more reef connected scored higher on all of these variables, apart from the variable not my responsibility to protecting the reef. So in conclusion, very quick wrap up. We are the first national survey about Australians' perception about the Great Barrier Reef, climate change and climate action. This research gives valuable insights into how Australians perceive and connect with the reef and how that connection influences their willingness to engage in climate action. And we can see that it's not as straightforward sometimes as we might think, and challenge is still to communicate the results to improve awareness and protection. Thank you. Any questions, ask them or send me an email. Thank you very much.